All right, so let's call the.
You okay, Mitch?
Mitch.
All right.
It's very calm.
Gotta grab attention.
It's still not really. Yeah, it's gonna do it again. There you go.
Okay, good. Now that we're safe. Let's call the council committee's meeting and workshop for Monday, October 23rd to order. Roll call shows that councilors Demerit, Penny, Marks, Berthasel, and Powers are present, as am I. Councilor Wincard, Councilor Laraway is away this evening. We're going to start our agenda this evening with a discussion of community development with Councilor Demerit.
Great, thank you. It's a pleasure to welcome so many people to our council meeting this evening and assume that the community development committee discussion conversation about the Orono Public Library Foundation's requests regarding the informational session about the proposed library expansion project and capital contribution is a big draw. So turn it over to James, gonna take it, James Jackson Sanborn, president of the Orono Library Foundation, to give us an overview. Okay, so welcome, thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me, and thank you all for entertaining the topic. I also want to recognize and thank everyone who's out in the audience. We have a lot of people who have volunteered. We have current members of the foundation, past members of the foundation, members of the Friends, members of the trustees. So we have a lot of people here, and so thank you all for coming out. I'm going to go real quick background. I think everyone probably has gotten up to speed on a lot of what has gone on around the library and ideas for expansion. We presented just over a year now where we have been. So hopefully people are up to speed on that. I'll go over that, but happy to answer any questions. Feel free to interrupt me at any time, and then we'll get to the real fun stuff as well. So the first thing I want to just say is that the foundation was established in 2002. We are one of 3 support organizations for the Orono Public Library, the others being the Friends and the trustees. We each kind of do our own thing to help support the library. The foundation really is there to help support capital campaigns and capital investments for the library. The foundation started by leading the campaign to build the current library that we're in. That library opened in 2009. The original needs assessment for that library, again, this is some review from what we talked about last September, so I'm going quickly. But the original needs assessment for that library was that for a community of our size and resources, we really needed a 12,000 or larger square foot library. For many, many reasons, we ended up with the approximately 6,500 square foot library that we currently have now. When the library opened, it was immediately, even before it opened, it was immediately understood and acknowledged that it was too small. We had to read, and we had already had value engineered out some of the spaces that really are valuable for communities like ours in libraries. In the intervening years, the foundation has also worked to bring on the Village Green and to help build that. And traditionally, it's a partnership between the foundation and the library and the town to bring about all of these capital improvements. The foundation helps lead raising the funds and helping with the design and planning, and then turns that over to the town along with funds, and the town contributes as well to build and bring our library visions, the shared vision to light. So our current goal is, of course, a library expansion. And just to recap some of the steps leading up to that current plan, we have had nearly 3 years of work now going into developing plans and trying to increase to lay the groundwork to expand the library. Toward that end, the foundation took part in site visits, some virtual, some physical, during COVID, to see what libraries and communities like ours have done, both with new buildings, but even more importantly, with buildings that have been expanded recently. We took a community survey that was available online, mentioned in the town newsletter, as well as available in print at a couple places around the community, just to kind of try to gauge community needs, community input on what was desired for additional spaces and additional service or additional spaces that the library could offer. And we also had many meetings with library staff and some other community meetings to talk about that. Through that whole process, we identified a number of areas that the library really needed help with. Some of those issues around space were group areas and meeting spaces. If you've ever been to some of the meetings that we have in that little flexible space that can pack out really quickly, and it doesn't allow for the number of people that we really want to have in those meetings. We identified that there needs to be additional children's area. Children's story hour is always packed and it kind of gets wedged into the corners. We also have identified a need for a distinct teen space. After school, when you go there, you'll see the teens come in and have really made the space their own, which is amazing. But it also infringes some on the children's space or other spaces, and having a space that could be their own could make that even more valuable for them. Of course, materials and collections is always a need for libraries for space. Quiet reading space. The flip side of always having the teens and the children there is the library doesn't have an amazingly, just a comfortable quiet space. And so that was something that was identified during the survey and through other meetings for areas that we needed. And finally, staff space is at a premium and really has not been available in a way that it needs to be in a lot of different situations, particularly now as library staff are involved in so many statewide efforts and statewide collaborations that bring so much to the community. If they don't have appropriate spaces for that, they're on Zoom meetings that other people can hear that are talking about library issues, and it just gets to be an issue. We can talk over some of those other needs as needed. But once we really identified those needs, we came up with the idea that we would run a seed fund campaign. And so we did a very quiet seed fund campaign. We had a few very dedicated couple who are in the audience today, very dedicated volunteers who helped go out and raise funds. And in a very short amount of time, we raised over $150,000 from donors. We had no plans to show. We just had a great concept that we needed additional space. And so it really, I think that really helped show through a good effort what we were able to accomplish in the community. Using those funds and funds that the foundation already had, we worked with an architect and a fundraising consultant, and we have developed plans and draft designs that we'll be showing you soon. We also worked, since our last meeting in September, we had identified in March of last year that the congressional direct spending, the CDS requests for funding, was something that we could look to apply for. And so over the course of, it really was about 14 calendar days, so less than 2 full weeks of business days. Laurie, myself, and a whole bunch of other people worked with our fundraising consultant to put together an application for congressionally directed spending through both Senator Collins and Senator King's office. We applied through rural development through the Department of Agriculture. The request was for 3.6 million with an estimated total project of approximately $7 to $7.1 million. We can go into a little bit of that as we go on as well. But we were really excited in June when both Senator Collins and Senator King's alerted us that they had included us in their request. And since that time, the request has made it through a number of following steps, committee work and budget drafting, and it is now sitting there as part of the proposed budget. So where it stands right now is that we are waiting for Congress to actually be able to come together and pass a budget. Both Senator King's and Senator Collins' office have assured us that it is highly unusual and highly unlikely that funding of this type would ever be edited during that final budget process. So we feel really confident that when the budget is passed and then signed by the president, that we will be included in that. We have recent emails from Senator King's and Senator Collins' office, the staff there, that they're hoping it's this calendar year, but again, we all have seen some of what's going on in DC right now. So we're hoping that it will be this calendar year. If and when that budget is passed, there are still multiple steps that we would be going through to get those funds, but those funds would be a guaranteed set of funds at that point. I spoke with a library director who had previously been at Sanford Goodall Memorial Library in Sanford, who received those funds in the last round. They were alerted that the budget had passed and they were receiving funds at the very end of December, actually Christmas Eve. And they went through a number of those hoops and were finalized for those funds at the end of March. They are now getting those funds in October and early November. So it's about a year process once that happens. So that is where we currently stand. So if I can, I'd like to actually share some of the designs as they currently are standing. So on the screens, hopefully you can see there are some behind you that might be easier for people to see behind them as well. This is an front-facing elevation looking across Pine Street at the main entrance. Thank you. And just to kind of highlight what you're seeing, you can make out at the very top, you can make out the existing roof line, but then we've come forward across the entire front facade and out on the extreme left of the page. We've actually extended the building toward the parking lot to the left. There is, you'll see in a couple other slides, this does respect the current parking and sidewalks, so it doesn't involve any reorganization of that space necessarily. On the extreme right, actually, let's go back one more still, sorry.
Sorry.
I'm
Moving it too quickly.
yeah, I'll be as quick as I can. On the extreme right is where a new community meeting area would be. And right in the middle, behind that van or SUV, whatever that is the entrance area. That entrance area would go into the main library, but also have an entrance that's accessible only at night, or it could be accessible so that we can have the community space fully accessible even when the library is closed without having to staff the library. On the extreme left of that, you'll see a bump out going out. That is, you'll see some of that in other slides as well. That is a new children's area. And then the peaked windows right there between the children's area and the entryway area, those that would be where the new teen space would be located. So now we can go to that slide.
All right.
But feel free to ask questions as you see stuff. This is just another elevation looking at it from the rear to kind of show where it is. Again, on the extreme right of the page now is the children's area. You can see that the walkway and stairwell, which is a little bit hard to see in the rendering, are not affected by the designs. Similarly, the village green is not affected by the designs. The patio would be affected, but not substantially. And what this view really shows is coming out from the back of the library is an expanded stacks area for expanded library collections and the quiet reading room that also has some ability to be closed off for book groups or the like.
James, is
Yes.
that the current, where the current door to the back is, or is that moved now?
So the
Down.
and so on the main expanse, that is where the current door is, yes.
That
Yeah.
helps me orient.
Yeah. So that's that. Note, there is a very large south-facing roof that we envision having solar panels to help meet the needs of the energy of the library and maybe beyond. Next slide. This is a view looking down. I have another slide that will show exactly where the existing building is versus where the expansions are. But in general, the darker blue and green are new spaces. Some of them built into the existing structure, some of them coming forward from that. But looking down again, you'll see at the very front or bottom of the page on the right is the community room. Highlighting in that is that there's a yellow entryway that can open into the community room. The community room will be designed to be divided, so it can be used as two separate rooms or one larger room. There is some storage space and control room space built off to the farther off to the right on that page. To just above the community room is an area labeled prep kitchen. That's actually a combination prep kitchen and break space. It would not be a full kitchen. We don't want to deal with stoves and all of that, but would have a sink and refrigerators, microwave, that kind of stuff. So we wouldn't have to deal with actual cooking, but that would be available through doors and windows into the community room during community time, but would also be able to be used by staff as their staff break room when the community room is not using that space. We have some tutoring space built in, continuing kind of counterclockwise up to the very top. You'll see the additional stack space coming off of the back of the building and then the adult reading room. Continuing around, you'll see where the building right now, the existing children's library in light blue, that is extended to allow additional stack space for the children and then bumped out for the children's reading room. And we have a nice view of that in another slide as well. And then finally, we have the teen room coming off of that space. So it's a dedicated space, separate, but still able to be monitored from the children's area. And then we have flexible workspace that can be used both for other meetings or for staff or for activities that might not be appropriate for the community room, some messy activities or something along those lines. We have a vestibule with an entry space. And then the other area that I haven't talked about that's kind of new is this community living room area. So when you first walk in, that's where circulation would be, but that's also where displays could be made. That's where some new books could be displayed, some comfortable seating, just an area for gathering, not for presentations, but for gathering and for browsing and for circulation. So the next slide. This is the slide that shows the interior kind of straight down, we have not gone to the point where we actually have furniture picked out. So this is not to show you exactly how many seats would fit where, but just to give you an idea of what types of ways this space could be arranged. So you can see the community room could have different options for how that is arranged. The community living room could have tables or couches as well as display areas. The circulation desk is one that is reusing some of the existing circulation desks, but pushing that over into the community living room area. That's the kind of little yellow question mark shape that's next to the community living room. And so you can see kind of just a general feel for how that would be.
Is that three bathrooms next to that? Or
so so we have bathrooms, and the idea would be that we have bathrooms off of the children's area, most likely redesigned to be single occupancy. So they can be flexibly used as needed. We also will be looking to add bathrooms off of the community room. That probably would be, that's roughly where Laurie's office is right now, would be some bathrooms that could be used when the community room's closed off from the library at night, but open to the library for use during the day. So we're trying to be flexible that way. The library entrance is also designed to be a nice space for strollers, for coats, during the winter, for, really being able to put stuff there, as people come in. And this is also the view that was updated actually today. So if you looked at this in the packet that was sent out earlier, it didn't have the kind of lilac overlay. That lilac overlay is the existing facility. So it shows you where the existing facility is that would be remaining, which is the main area. We would be removing and redoing the area that's bumps out into the community living room, just to make that. So that's the overview. Next slide. That's the same one, but yeah. Yeah, sorry, question.
What is the total additional square footage
Yep.
from the six?
So the total additional square footage, we go from approximately 6,500 up to 13,758. So just over 7,000 additional square feet.
When you put that into perspective, I think Lori has the historic knowledge, but when you initially programmed the library before this one was built, how many square feet did they say you should have?
12,000.
Yeah.
So we're going to 12,000.
At least, yeah.
At least 12,000, yes.
Yeah, any other? Okay, great. And then we just have a couple kind of artist rendering just to kind of help flesh it out a little bit, but without putting too much detail in, but just to kind of show you a little bit about the way that we think some of the spaces could be used. This is that community living area. So the parent with a child is right near the main entrance. The person in the purple sweater set is behind the circulation desk. And then we have an area that could be used again for displays, for comfortable seating with good views out to Pine Street and high ceilings for a nice feel of that gathering area. Next. This is a view looking from the existing stacks into the new stack addition off the back of the building with a small view at the doorway and kind of how you would enter into the quiet reading room, showing pocket doors, which are, turns out Laurie and I are both huge fans of pocket doors. So anyway, so that you can close that off for reading area or book groups or the like, and the view out to the patio. This is again just a quick rendering from the children's stacks area, looking into the children's reading room area that would be perfect for children's story hour and other activities there. And also showing the view into the doors that can be used to access the teen reading space behind the lady reading the book. And next. And then this is just a quick view from the front of the community meeting room, showing how it could be divided or opened into two different spaces, as well as a view into the prep kitchen area that we imagine that could be opened or closed as needed.
Suits and ties required.
Yes, absolutely.
James, do you know the square footage for this community meeting space-ish?
Community space. New community room entry. Here we go. New community meeting rooms. It's just shy of 2,000 square feet. So 1,800 square feet.
You said there was storage off of this, so you
Yep.
would like store all the furniture possibly?
Yeah, so off, you can actually see behind the FBI agents that are in that space. You can see in that space, those are actually doors not to the outside, but those are doors into the areas where AV controls would be, as well as chairs and table storage. And I think that is the end of the slide and what we have there. So
Sharon?
Unless there is anything people want to go back and see, questions?
I just have one question. What's gonna be underneath the new stacks, the new, the adult new?
So that actually an option that could be explored. Right now, underneath that back corner is the space for the mechanical. Thank you. I was blanking on the word for the mechanical and the heating and all of that. That would continue to be used that way. We potentially, depending on the final plans, final budget, and final construction costs, that addition could be on its own slab, brought up to grade on its own slab with nothing underneath it. Or that could be additional space that we may want to use for other types of activities or storage or meeting areas, or, that really is, that's kind of probably the one kind of the biggest question mark, and gives us a lot of flexibility as we move forward as well. Is it okay to take questions?
Yeah, it's okay
Okay.
if we ask the audience, if the council's okay. Yeah, if anyone in the audience, so please, if you could just introduce yourself and what your comment or question is, that'd be great.
I know it's a long ways down the line, but are you looking at materials like rugs that are non-toxic? Because we've become much more aware of what's in the environment around us and being non-toxic, especially for the people that work there, that spend all day there.
Yep, so at this point, that is one of those types of things that we have talked about, mentioned that would be important. It hasn't made it into our plans because our plans really are around the space, not necessarily the fillings, but the material to fill it. But obviously, it's something that I'd be really interested in. I think it's something this community would really be valuing, is to making sure that we have sustainability and health in mind. Yeah, thank you.
We
Good
have a
question.
hand up on Facebook as well.
Oh, okay. Could we bring in a question from Facebook? Thank you.
That is.
Mike Tipping.
Hey, thank you. I would notice there's an increase in the stacks for both the children and adult sections. Can you speak to the increase in the size of the collections?
We haven't really gotten there yet necessarily. We do know that the collection does need to grow because we have been weeding far too often, too quickly. We want to keep those books around a little bit longer. I don't know what that percentage is. I certainly could find out what that would look like. And I think that's a piece that we haven't really worked on yet. So I wouldn't say it's needing to double, but somewhere between 10 and 25% more space. But don't quote me on it. We will work on that and find out a solid number for you.
Yeah, and just as
Thank you.
comparison, stacks currently are around 1,400 square feet, and the additional extension for adult stacks, and I believe that includes the reading area, is for just over 1,000 square feet. So it's not a doubling of the adult stacks, but it is an additional amount there. Similarly, children's stacks expand from around 1,400, an additional 500 square feet for the stacks, and that's not including the 500 square feet for the reading. So that would be where what that translates exactly into book feet on shelves is all dependent on height of shelves and the types of shelves and the closeness of that. So that's, in many ways, that is an area where the foundation would want to support what the town and the library want to do operationally. In some ways that comes out of what the foundation purview really is. We want to support that to be as good as possible. So, Deb?
Just 2 points. As a library professional, I always am concerned when the staff space is always, for some reason, at the bottom of the list. And often the space that when cuts need to be made, then that space gets cut. I really want to emphasize how important it is for staff to have designated space of all kinds. So it's really good that that's in there. secondly, some of us were all at a meeting talking about town space needs in terms of buildings in towns. And I think Lisa and I pointed out at that time that in addition to the library would solve a lot of those town space needs. And I think that this design definitely does that.
With ADA compliance in mind as well as the sustainability. And yeah, thank you for mentioning that on staff. Yeah, as a library professional myself, I think that one of the things that we have seen is that staff space being reduced in the original building has had a real detriment on what can be done for staff. We've had nursing mothers who haven't had spaces. We've had, we don't have enough space for the amount of materials that get moved in and out of the library from the Minerva Consortium and the main CAT system as well. Having workspace is really important.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to stand over here so I can be heard a little bit.
Please do.
By your lead. Mr. Chairman, I'm Paul Smith. I'm a taxpayer in Orono, Maine, with a croaky voice, but you can hear me. That'll work. Anyway, I support this proposed expansion of this library, and I really urge the town council to commit to funding a portion of this expansion within the town's long-range capital funding plan. Just a couple comments on services provided by this library. This library, I think, serves a really high percentage of our population, perhaps a considerably higher percentage than our other municipally funded amenities in this community. It's the library, its services and its facilities are accessible to absolutely everyone financially. There is no equipment, no uniforms, no fees, no dues involved. It's there for this community. And the library really facilitates diversity connections in this community. And I think, any of us that go down there, anytime I go in there, I always just find somebody interesting to talk to or a group of people to visit with or all kinds of things. So it's just a crossroads for people of all age groups, ethnicities, identities, information, interests, and income and education levels. So since this library opened in 2009, it's expanded its services, and community has expanded its demands, and that has become both a success and a challenge within the existing spaces. And I won't. We've all heard better presentations than I can do off the cuff here on what the needs are for the spaces on there. So I'm not going to go through all of that, but it's there. I introduce myself as a taxpayer in this community, and when I see a brand new project like this, I kind of reach for my wallet, and I'm thinking, this is all a great idea, but how are we going to pay for it? And I kind of put that in the metric of, what's going to happen to the mill rate? Go up 5 cents? Well, that'd be trivial. Go up 50 cents? Yeah, that's doable. Go up $5? That's a non-starter. So anyway, just looking to the future on this thing, a little back of the envelope calculation, $2.6 million bond issue for this project. It would add on the order of 50 cents or less to the mill rate in the initial year. And then that would decline in subsequent years as the principal and the bonds are paid off. And for me, it would add about $115 a year to my property tax bill in the first year, because that would decline as years goes on. For the library I love, I'll pay. Thank you.
That's wrong. Thank you very much, Paul. Yes.
Deborah Jackson Weiss, also a resident and taxpayer of Orono, and also a retired librarian. I'm obviously in support of this, and I'd love to hear what, if any, objections there are from members of the council.
I'm not gonna go first on that one, but we'll we'll talk about it during our discussions, but thank you. We'll get, we'll have a conversation. Once we've heard from everybody in the public. So anybody else want to be heard? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Lisa Feldman, another retired librarian.
We're everywhere.
We're everywhere.
Yeah, we're everywhere. Debbie and I think between us have worked in, visited, seen lots and lots and lots of libraries. We know this library very well. I want to thank James and his committee for an incredibly inventive and yet practical design that squeezes the maximum amount of workable space out of a very, very, very challenging site. So thank you, James. We are lucky to have you and everybody else on the committee.
Yes, thank you.
My name is Alma Mola and I lived down College Avenue for more than 50 years. And I would just like to compare what happened to the original addition, the library plan, and how we only got half to what happened with the auditorium at the high school. My oldest daughter was the first class in the addition to the high school where we couldn't afford the auditorium to the tune of about $10,000. And unfortunately, when she visited recently, we didn't have a chance for her to see what is there now for our community and our children, a real auditorium for their things. And I would just like to compare this as how we had to consolidate and give up before. And I've been a financial contributor to both projects. And so I encourage you to take that step for our library.
Anyone else? Turn back to
Oh,
go.
Yep.
Do we have someone else?
Yep.
Thank
This
you.
is Pip Hansen.
Pip, can you say hello? And
You're good.
hi, Pip, can we hear from you? You're on mute, Pip. All right, well, we'll try. We'll turn to our discussion. Pip, if you can come off mute, we'd be happy to hear from you. Is that? Okay. So, Matt, did you have a specific question or before we?
Oh, yeah, I mean, it was just a nuts and bolts thing. Honestly, or
Okay. So in terms of our discussion, we've gotten. The foundation has given us a very, I thought, well-written and compassionate letter. And I don't know, councilors have questions about the specific ask of the letter. I had a couple that I think I identified, but I wanted to see if anyone, if that's a good place for us to start. Sophie, do you have any suggestions for us in terms of?
No, I just want to remind folks that this is a committee meeting and not a place that you would take formal action, but you can most definitely talk about where you want to go that would frame next steps.
Perfect. So I wrote down a couple things. So I had a question. What is we talked before about the percentage of the match, right? This federal
Yep.
program has an expectation that locally there has to be a match, either private funds or public funds. What does that amount to in terms of the 3.6 million if it comes to pass in the federal budget? And while there's dysfunction there in Washington, we'll hope that they get to the point where they can pass a budget. And this is included. So what is the percent match for us?
Yeah, thank you. So the percent match is based on our rurality from the rural from the Department of Agriculture for Rural Development. And it is 55%, and it means that the CDS funding can be up to 55% of the total project
Okay.
cost. When you do that, when you do the math on the 3.6 million, that works out to be just under total project of 7 million. So it'd be looking at right around 3.3, I believe, is the 45% portion. We have pegged in an effort not to give a number now and then raise it again and then raise it again, as we've all seen construction costs and everything go up. We have tried to be as realistic as we can with that 7 to 7.1 million total project cost.
Okay, so the 3.6 is the CDS piece, and that can be up to 55% of a total. You've done a little division and you get to a ballpark of about 7 million for a total expansion project.
Yeah.
Of which you're asking the town of Orono, the taxpayer of Orono, is to make a pledge of between $2.5 and $3 million.
Yeah, so the way that we have tried to look at this from the foundation perspective is that the funding has to be made up of multiple parts, and the foundation is looking to bring, well more than half of that with CDS funding and through a capital campaign. And if we peg 7 million as the target project cost, we really need to have a relatively firm determination of what the town will be able to commit to the campaign. And that's really something that we need to be able to bring to our campaign donors, because they're going to want to know not only that the federal government is bringing an amount in, but that the town is also has a portion of the funding coming to it. And then we can develop our capital campaign and the actual target that we would be taking on. And we've already started work on research for the capital campaign and the like. So we're really ready to go, which is why, just for everyone in the audience, if you hadn't seen the letter, it was part of the materials on the website. The foundation is really hoping that we're able to get a commitment with a dollar amount sometime in the next month or two. That doesn't mean that the funds are there in the next month or two, obviously, but that we know going forward what that is, so we can start a capital campaign as quickly as possible in 2024, so that we can really move quickly through this.
James, that was my question. Just, is that okay? It's
Yeah,
a follow-up
please,
on
yeah.
this. Just about the November 13th, date by which you had said you would like an answer from us. Is there something very specific about November 13th, or is this,
I think we chose the November 13th when I was looking at a town council calendar,
We have our
that there
notes.
would be some meetings at that date, and that seemed, if it were at all possible to have it, then that would allow us to finish our research, to lay some groundwork and get going first thing in 2024.
I ask, and I have a follow-up question that maybe goes to Sophie, which is, I agree with Paul very strongly about being very much in support of this project and very much in support of the library. And I'm also aware that Sophie's presented us with a list of all the other capital projects that are coming at us and our budget over the next, 6 years, something like that. And I don't know if the community members have all, I know it's on the links, I've seen that, but I think my question to Sophie is, my understanding is that we were supposed to have more information on some of these other capital projects coming our way late fall is what I remember being told. Do you have a timeline for when that information would come?
So you have the community facilities assessment that we've kind of parked until you would get the public safety building assessment. That is scheduled to come before you on November 27th. And then later on in November, December-ish, I think Rob is working for a December, is the first rollout of the Route 2 corridor project. And the sewer project is gonna dovetail with that project, simply because trying to dig through the cement, the concrete in Route 2 makes the sewer project not really something that we would do on its own.
That's helpful, because I think my question is kind of going to be back to you all. Can you wait for us to get that information? Because I do feel like it's difficult for us to know. For me, I can just say, we're looking at 16 million of capital projects on this bigger list. And I would say for me, the library is my first love and my first priority. I see all these people here. It seems to be for many people in town also, but there is like a bigger picture. So I'm just curious if that answer didn't come to you all until the end of December, early January, what kinds of problems would that cause?
Yeah, thank you. So the types of problems that cause really just are around pushing out the capital campaign a little bit further and our ability to set goals for that. As part of the CDS funding, I shared a little bit about kind of when funds become available. So if we were looking at CDS funding coming available around this time next year, maybe a little bit later, given that things seem maybe slower this time around than last year. The proposal was that we really wanted to start construction in the June of 2025. So with that kind of becomes a point where we really need to have our capital campaign wrapped up by then. And we really are feeling that it's going to take a year to a year and a half to successfully run a capital campaign on the order of that roughly $1 million if the amounts that proposing are there. If it's significantly less, then we're going to have to look at other options. But
So you still need to raise $1 million from philanthropy.
yes.
Yeah, and then is there a time limit on how much time you have to expend the CDS funding? Do you have 18 months, 2 years, forever?
It's not forever.
Yeah.
In the conversations with the director in Sanford, they're looking for the funds to start being used within that, basically at that start timeframe.
Mhm.
And then I believe it was around 18 to 24 months. I'll have to, I will try to confirm and get
And I
back to
don't know
you.
about expending the funds, but the completion of the project, according to the grant, was September of 2026.
You gotta have all the money together
Yeah.
before you can,
Or at least committed.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And how long do you think it'll take you to raise the $1 million?
That's what we'd be looking at
12 to 18.
for that 12 to 18 months.
So you would ideally like to start that in January, if that were possible.
Yes.
And if we delayed that on our end, that would delay you till March. So you would be at 16 months instead of 18 at that point. Is that
Yes.
what I'm understanding?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sonia?
Yeah, I had the same question that Sarah did about timeline and this bigger picture of priorities, and would be like, if I think personally really ready to make a pledge of the 2.5 million by middle of November, if that's more helpful to your planning purposes. But if it's more helpful for the town council to know, like, what's the maximum amount that makes sense to give you a little bit later, a little time to think about it. And so I'm curious, what is that like trade-off for you? Is it helpful to have here, we can give you definitely at least this much sooner rather than later? Or
I'm to answer that, I would probably want to go back to talk to our
Sure,
fundraising consultant,
that
who
makes
really
sense.
does understand how these processes work much better than I do. My initial response is that the sooner, November or whatever, if a pledge of at least this much would let us set our targets. And obviously, if you were all to come back and say, oh, we can do 3. Well, then, things happen faster or things happen better. But I think if we have a good amount, then we can set our goals and really start working on the capital campaign. In many ways, a capital campaign normally starts with a quiet phase and a silent phase. And we've kind of blown past that because of the way the funding works, the CDS funding, and wanting to make sure that we have everyone involved. But we will, the beginning of a capital campaign really is about looking for major gifts and donations from individuals, foundations, corporations, and the like.
I think we have Pip Hansen, are you with us? Can you take yourself off? Oh, you're off mute. Go ahead.
Okay, hopefully this time my technology works. So my name is Pip Hansen. I've lived in Orono for just over 7 years now. And in all honesty, the library saved my life. We moved here in 2016. I had a newborn baby. I didn't know a soul in Orono. My husband had taken a job at the university. We were coming into winter. I was scared of driving. So I think we spend at least 4 or 5 days a week at the library. So I urge the town council to support this. Not only there is value in books and access to reading and community places to go, but for me, the library was what welcomed me to this town and made me feel part of the community. And I think if I hadn't had this, we wouldn't still be here. We would have packed up and gone back to my native New Zealand. Because through the library, I've made friendships that I still have now. And I am just so, so, so grateful for that. And yeah, just don't underestimate the value that the library has as a welcome centre to this town. And the value that it has beyond the books that it offers and the services that it offers.
Well, Pip, I'm very glad that we're able to get you off mute. I'm sorry you're not a librarian. Because that's mostly where we're coming from today, but thank you very, very much for sharing your story with us, and it's very impactful. So, does anyone have any other questions? I've got a couple like synthesizing type things, but
I do, James, appreciate the presentation, and that really looks like an amazing facility. Appreciate all of the work and everyone showing up here for this. Is the grant, the 3.6, is that like up to? So if you raise 4 million, they're gonna give you 45% of that. Is that how that works, or is it all or nothing? You have to raise. How does that work?
So I'd have to, again, that's one more thing that I can try to get back to you on. It is, my understanding is that as long as we can raise the matching, the matching, then we get that amount. So if we did it, yeah, I'm not really answering the question. I'm honestly, I'm not 100% sure. If we were to come back and say, hey, look, we could only raise 3 million, total. Outside of that, give us 3.1, not 3.6, if that is a fungible number or not.
Okay, so you don't know if it works that way or not.
Right.
And my experience is that that is the maximum number. So if this suddenly turned into an $8 million project, which it will not.
Right. No, and I think that you're right.
That it would max out at that. I think the piece that James will need to dial in is whether this is a match, dollar for dollar match, or if it is, we'll give you $3.6 million towards this library expansion. You raise money towards it, and whatever that is, you get the 3.6. I've seen grants both ways.
Okay.
sure, Sarah.
I was also wondering, before the meeting, when we might take a vote, official vote, can we also just have for the public the same math that Paul did? I did the same math, Paul, and I got the same thing you got exactly at home on what that would affect, mill rate for. But I think it would just be nice for the public to see that, that this is really what that would do to the mill rate and what that means for those of us who are not as conversant in mill rate. What that means for a $200,000 house or a $100,000 house or a 300, just to have some benchmark numbers. I liked it when the school did that on their project, so folks could really see the impact on taxes on their particular property. I think that's really a Sophie question. Is that something we could have?
I
for
told
the
Lori
public?
I would
Yeah.
build her a dashboard so
Yeah.
that she can plug a number in and.
Because, Paul's figures matched what I got exactly, but I'm not you, and you guys do that, official calculation. I got something similar, around $100 just over for a $200,000 house. And again, that was for the library. The 16 million for all the projects comes out to 600 a year on a $200,000 house. And that gets to be a lot if we approve the whole 16 million for all capital projects. So,
Well,
just to have.
I think the other thing that is kind of difficult to answer at this moment in time is if it's a $2.5 million project, then you might go through rural development or some other loan agency, which has one set of costs associated with it. If you were going to do multiple projects, you would likely want to float a bond ourselves because we get a better rate that way. But there are also associated costs with that. And I think Paul's used to one set of funding that goes down, but you can structure it in many different ways.
Yeah, so maybe a range, but some ideas so that we all just have those figures, I think is great for just transparency out to the public about what we're doing.
And I want to, I guess, speak some, one of the librarians in the crowd asked what the objections that the board has, and my hunch is nobody has objections, but I do think the responsibility is what Sarah was talking about, is understanding what this means in the full picture. Obviously, we can't just look at one thing and think about, okay, this is $100 on my taxes. We've got an entire budget, we've got many other, the infinite needs in the community with a finite set of resources. And I do want to say this, that though I maybe ask the questions that people don't enjoy asking, I want to be very clear that we moved back here in 2003 and my family's been everyone has been, we are fully supportive of the library, always have. My wife sat in James's position before, we very much involved. As soon as we moved back, Dana DeVoe recruited us to come and be on the board, because my wife was on the board, raising funds for the initial library. So despite, I guess, the fact that I am always, like Mr. Smith said, my first thing is reaching, understanding what it's going to mean to the wallet. And this is a great showing here. There's 11,000 people obviously in the community, and everyone brings a different perspective. So I just think it's important. And I think I'm a little leery of trying to say we're going to do something by November, to be very candid with other board members. We talked a little bit in the past also about the possibility of putting this on a ballot, like we did with the school, and I don't think that should be off the table either.
The only problem with that is nothing could get on a ballot for a very long time, right? The timeline for that, how fast could we do it?
You know that you need to only do a municipal referendum in March. I think you could send something to voters anytime, but that's my hunch. That's not I wasn't expecting that question.
But
so I would need to do a little bit of research, but if you look at the ordinance, and I haven't been there in a while, and even the charter, it talks explicitly about the mechanism for residents having to use, but the fact that that mechanism does not preclude the council from sending any question it wants to the voters.
So if we don't give the good folks in this audience what they want, they can go around us to the people who
Well,
aren't get it approved anyway. And I'm not suggesting that in any stretch of it.
There's a
but there's
lengthy process to that.
But that's longer. We're talking about if we put
I
it on a
agree.
referendum,
Yeah.
because what Leo is saying, we could do it immediately. Yeah, okay.
Yep.
I'm in support of the project. I am a user of the library. I love the library. My family has been users of the library for forever and a day. I also think that the capital plan or the capital expenses that Sophie has presented us are all individual, right? So some are all or nothing, others can be shaped in different ways. It's not like we have to take the whole slate of 16 mil. So for me, this project is valuable. It's valuable to the community. It's a generational project. I want to support it. And I don't want to, not that I don't want to have the community vote on it, but I think we're elected to make choices, and for me, it's a clear choice to support the library. So that's where I come out.
If I can just clarify, in case there was any question. That list was, here are all the things that we currently have underway, and Rob Yerkes's best and Jeff Lowe's best estimate for what the cost might potentially be. That is understanding that you all have not vetted any of those, but what we didn't want was for you to look at this in a vacuum and then come back later and say, well, we didn't really think about those other things.
It's important to have all the information there.
Absolutely. This document's really helpful, and folks, I think you all would have access to this on the town website. It's a nice little grid of a number of long-term infrastructure projects that the town is considering. If you want to see how the library fits in with that bigger 16 million potential things we're thinking about picture.
Yep, Debbie.
I just wanted to say or ask, because I don't know what's on your $16 million list, but how many of those other projects have a $3.5 million grant being offered to them.
Two of them have a $30 million grant being offered to them for a
Well, that's
for a $4 million match.
Yeah, yeah, that's important information. I mean, where is the other income coming from? But, you know, I do think that the folks have done a fabulous job and in a very short period of time, putting together that application that has been, to this point anyway, very successful.
I kind of managed the discussion and I haven't jumped on my own soapbox yet, but I'm very supportive of this project. I'm very supportive of the way it's come forward, the community support for it. I love the idea of Orono investing in initiatives and projects that have a lot of citizen engagement in the development of those projects. And I would like to know, I mean, I'm ready to support the pledge of the 2.5 million. And I want to know kind of what are the mechanics of getting you a pledge that you need in terms of, because we'll have to think about how we fund it, whether it's been part of a bigger package. We could sign a letter for you. I mean, I'm, you know, you can write it down on the post-it note for you right now, but what is it that you need from us? For, I mean, there'll be different kind of, you know, as much as there'll be an election in March and all those things. And I mean, there's nothing final in government until it's final.
So council can't take action on individual basis, even if it's an individual basis of a majority of councilors.
Right.
Can only take action when it sits as the official town council.
Yep.
So this would be an order that you would make a pledge, and I probably would make that pledge contingent upon the legal elements. So once if you were to pledge $2.5 million, that would immediately allow residents to try to secure signatures to send it to referendum, because it's over $500,000. So, and I think the foundation would like to see that now as opposed to later.
Yep.
Right? So that one formal action pledge will start and bring security further down the road. When you make a pledge, it would be harder for future councils to undo that, but not impossible.
Yeah.
And I guess you just hope that people in the future will sit where you are and think about the fact that you had certain information when you made this decision and honor it. Then you would go through that appeal process before you're getting ready to sign contracts, because once you make the pledge and authorize the manager to execute whatever documents are necessary, you would be in a position to then have something that was binding. So it didn't get overturned after the fact.
And then we'd still be able to decide with the support of the manager, the finance team, what's the best way to come good on that.
Yeah, I think what you want to do is understand where you are in total.
Yeah.
And if you're there in total, that would then, if I were in your shoes, which I won't be in your shoes, I would then bring in our bond advisor to talk to you about all of the different opportunities that would be available in terms of loans, government loans, main bond bank, and or floating our own loan.
I think our town staff and Sophie and your leadership is bringing us some transformational opportunities in our community. We talked about it on the tax letter, on the back of the tax bill that we sent out, in turn wanting to engage the community in those conversations. So I think for me, this is putting a marker down. This is one of those transformational opportunities, and I'd be comfortable in November with that pledge, but at the same time, I truly respect other councilors who think we need more time to kind of discuss in the context of some of those other things. But I think we're going to end up getting some number more than 2.6 million that, you know, watch your wallet, Paul. But I mean, I think we're gonna have a number that we'll talk about as a community that will go forward. And I think this is definitely part of it. And a first among many, well, not many, but some important projects. So that's my take on it.
Just so I'm understanding you, you're perfectly ready to commit to this without considering the whole 15 million or you're saying like, this is you're saying this is a definite, we'll figure the rest out. I'm not clear on what it sounds like you're committing to, I guess,
Right.
at this stage.
I'm comfortable pledging that this is a project that gets included at 2.6 million of whatever I'm of the impression that we're gonna have a omnibus is a word that comes out of Washington, but I think we're gonna have some sort of omnibus capital investment plan / program by the time we're done our work in the next several months. And I think that this is gonna be a part of it. And I think that I'm comfortable as a counselor saying this is gonna be a part of that at the $2.5 million level. And that we should, and it's a great signal to the community in terms of what transformational project looks like, but you know, people can differ, but that's where I'll come down on it.
I feel fine with that.
I personally am all for going with the library and going with this particular one. I think it's got strong support. The only way I could ever come to change my mind is if a whole wave of community members came to me and were like, no, I don't think this is valuable. This is not what we want to be spending our money on. And this is not where we are at, but I can't, that's just not going to happen. Right. And so I'm like, like it would be detrimental to the community not to say yes on this one. That's me personally. But at the same time, you guys as a community have to understand people are going to come to us and say, the police department's going to come to us, the fire department's going to come to us and say, look, just like the librarians, their facilities are not good for the librarians. We need somewhere to put our people. What are you going to do about it? Right. And so then we're going to be coming to people like you and us. Are you willing to spend even more money out of your pocket to make this happen, right? For these people too. So you're asking one thing and I'm all for it, but at the same time, whole other factions are going to be coming to us and asking us for the same thing. And so saying, yes, I'm willing to open my pocketbook for this particular thing, then we need more input. Like, are you willing to open your pocketbook for these other? Some of it will be totally transformational. If we can get 30 million to redo Route 2, that's gonna be completely altering Orono, I think, for the better. So we have to understand that these things are not in a vacuum. But at the same time, the library, we gotta support the library. Yeah, that's me.
To read for folks who are here what the list is.
Yeah.
What we have on here is the Route 2 infrastructure project, where our ask to us as taxpayers was 3 million. The Route 2 sewer upgrade, where the ask to taxpayers is 2 million. The Orono Public Library expansion with an ask to taxpayers, we're talking of 2.5. Public safety building renovations with an ask of 5 million. And community building renovations, which would include all the other community buildings that we haven't talked about yet, with an ask of 1 million. So also a ladder truck at the bottom from the fire department with an ask of 2 million. Right, so that's what's on the list.
Just from a logistic and timing standpoint, it would be my assumption to ensure that we have transparency and everybody knows what's going on, that you would likely want a public hearing on this pledge if you want, right? So you would end up calling the public hearing in November and the vote wouldn't be until December, what is that, 11th?
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the timing, if you go the way you're talking about that.
Do we have a chance to have any we stack a special council meeting on top of a committee meeting so that we could call it, or do we need 2 weeks?
So council can do whatever council wants to do. It has not been council's practice in the past, to put public hearings or issues like this on special council meetings unless there was a hard and fast deadline, like a grant application was due or something of that nature. But you can do whatever you wish to do. And I can tell you, we're looking at a special council meeting on November 23rd to take care of some appointments and changes.
A lot of deference to the old, the chair of the council, not just the committee. So, but at the same time, if we were, we're gonna be meeting, I don't know, we could have if we could have a special council meeting to call the public hearing and in and out in 5 minutes, and then we have the public hearing and the vote on the 13th.
Yeah, I think it'd be better to expedite it like that.
Yep.
If we can. Okay, so we'll look at, I'll look at the calendar with Sophie.
Okay.
Make sure we get.
So is that. Can we close this piece out? Anybody have anything else, or? Feels like we're heading in the right direction of a pledge from, we still gotta vote on it, so we'll have to count the 7, but.
Thank you all so much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. And thank you all.
Sounds great.
I mean, getting us to this point.
It's so much more fun. There's some people here. I know it's wonderful. It's so much fun.
And you'll be able to apply for a mini grant if you want as well sometime soon. You want to stick around for the next agenda item.
Right, and there's a community potluck happening on
Yeah.
November 5th.
Community potluck November 5th.
All right. So. Jump ahead, go to the next.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
I know, it's all right. Thanks.
Please come every week, James. It's awesome. Thank you.
All right, the next item on our agenda was for the Community Development Committee. I think we'll move quicker. More quickly. This one is the council community building mini grant program. So we talked in October, earlier in October about that. We had a 1-pager, and I know we had some feedback from Sophie on where to go. And so do we have anything new?
Yep. So what you have from me is that I had a conversation with the town attorney and asked for some guidance around the requirements of providing public funds to private people, because as I have envisioned this, and I might be wrong, but the way I envisioned based on the 1-pager was somebody applied, they wanted to do an event. Then I would get a approval from the council at a council meeting. I would take that through finance and I would cut a check to that individual for whatever the event amount was. That creates kind of a host of ticky-tack kind of issues, and I want to be able to work through them. But I also am sensitive to the fact that council very much wants to kick this off. And so I am wondering the workaround that I would suggest you think about for this year and allow your incoming management to kind of work through this issue would be a 1-page application that is posted where people talk about what their event is, give a general budget, any in-kind contributions that they think they could get for that budget. So it would give you a sense of what the town ask is, what the goals are. And talking with Sarah or communicating with Sarah, it really sounded like the expectation was that these would likely be held in public spaces that already meet ADA. And a lot of those, if we say, most of them are probably going to be on town-owned property. So I'm just wondering if it would make sense for those to come in, go through a staff process, much like any other application does, where we're giving you feedback on how this works and if there are any issues, only if there are issues. And if there are no issues, when you got it, you would see if there's things you need to work around or if it's all set to go. And you adopt it as an activity that you would like to do, which means if somebody wanted to have a weekly coffee hour at the Keith Anderson, and it was a program that council wanted to sponsor, it's a council program. All they have to do is vet their plan to make sure it complies with the rules, which really are not that onerous. We would pay for the coffee, the whatever, the band, the whatever it is in the budget that you say is allowable. You would need to, as part of that, waive the town's procurement process, because quite frankly, I don't think any of us want to get into where do you get the cheapest coffee. And I think that would allow us to clearly be within our responsibilities for how we disperse and account for town funds. We don't have to worry about somebody who has all the best of intentions, gets a check for $750 and gets sick and it doesn't happen, and then you're trying to chase them for it and all of that stuff. We don't have to worry about somebody accidentally buying beer when you absolutely can't do that or that kind of stuff. And we can be really clear about things like political activity and things that absolutely we can't use money for. So that's, Roger is a little slow. I know why. He's working on other things for us. But instead of holding everything up, that would be my suggestion. It, I think, makes it easier for residents to download the one-page application, essentially send it in. We'd send it to you guys, and if there was an issue you had to work around with the taxpayer, you would know it upfront.
I think that sounds like a great workaround.
What if we put that on as like, build a new town project? And just have that be part of the, like, the advertisement for this?
Sophie, how long do you envision, like, from staff, like, say I send in a mini grant application and it goes to, I don't know, we have an email that says minigrants@orono.org and it goes there and staff looks at it, how fast before it gets to council? My biggest concern is turnaround time for folks in the community who might have an idea. Sometimes people have ideas of things they want to do like next month. So,
Yeah, so I think, we post agendas usually Thursday or Friday. I think as long as they come in by Wednesday, they probably can be at the committee level. If you're under $5,000, as long as you all agree and stay with your agreements, staff has kicked things off before that you later confirm on orders, but it's your money. It's in the council budget. So essentially you're giving direction to staff on how to spend that money.
so you think if someone were to send in an application on any day of the week up until Wednesday, it could get to us at the next Monday meeting we had, whether that was an official council meeting or a committee meeting,
Yeah, as long
to
as
make a decision, and they could get an answer back from us basically then within a week to 10 days max is what we're talking.
Yeah, and I think that it's one of those things that requires trust.
Yeah. Because
if I sit at a committee meeting or Mitch, because a lot of this would probably be run through Mitch supporting it. If he heard at a committee meeting that you're fine with $1,000 budget for X event, then we would do that with the understanding that when it came to the council meeting, you would approve it. But we're also saying if it came in the Wednesday before a council meeting, that it would show up on under new business and you would be fine with that. And as long as that's the case, I don't see why that's tough. And I think, we could check on things like, is the Keith Anderson available on that date? And, stuff like that. It just gives a little bit of time.
Sure, and you could then send it to us anyway, but with a notation, Keith Anderson is not available, they might need to look at using the Birch Street space or something like that. You wouldn't just not send it, you would send it with notations from staff. Great.
Cool.
I like this idea. How does anybody else feel?
It seems good to me.
I
I'm
think the
excited to
way
move
that-
ahead with these.
How do you feel, Leo?
So what I will do is on your next council meeting, I'm just gonna do a little blurb about how you expect this to work. And we can adopt the guidelines for this for now, and then you can decide if this is not meeting your need to change it.
Sounds good. But you're looking at that coming to us at our next official council meeting, so that's on November 13th.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not, I
Not
think
next week. We're waiting for the official council meeting for the next step.
if I get it, my problem at this moment in time is
just
that
back.
stuff is
Yeah.
backing up, but yeah, and I think there are people here who have heard me say how we would deal with it, so I think the question I have is, do you want to make the one pager or do you want?
I'll take a crack at it. if
We
you
can do
like.
it.
Yep, that would be great.
Do you still want to send us the language though from Parks and Rec about all events must meet all of this
Yeah, and I
inclusion
have
criteria?
that.
If you could just send that to
Yep.
Dan, because I think that's important to get in there.
Yep.
Thanks.
I'll go back, I'll make sure I watch this video again. to make
Yeah,
sure
she's
to-
got specific language. I know.
Part,
Yeah.
just to make sure, part of what we look at is if the town is reducing the cost. So we're not charging, anybody can rent the Keith Anderson. But if you want a reduction in cost or, it can't be a private business making
Yeah.
money and
Yeah.
it can't be political activity and it, okay,
So send all that language to Dan
Yep.
so we can be sure we put it somewhere clearly.
sounds good.
Thank you.
Anything else? Anyone online with comments? Pete?
It's
No.
me.
Oh, there's no, just.
No hands
Yeah, no
raised.
hands raised. All right, C, review of proposed language for a charter amendment related to moving the annual municipal election from March to November. I had emailed earlier, just a reference to how the state and the federal government uses language that it's the Tuesday after the first Monday of the month. Just, I don't know if we want to, I think this covers it regardless, because within 30 days of the first Tuesday is always going to be. So I just wanted to raise that and see if anyone had any thoughts about that in terms of conformity, but
You say whatever is the simplest way for us to make this. So if it changing this language to conform with state's language makes the implementation easier, let's do that. If the implementation is easier with less precise language, but within a certain number of days, let's do that. I'm more action oriented with
Yeah.
this than I am
Yeah.
worried about the actual language.
Yep. So,
Sophie, did staff have an opinion on the two language options?
Senate,
So I think however you choose to propose a charter amendment is 100% up to you.
Sure.
I think that staff would normally say the smaller the change, the less chance there is. And I also think what this says is you're gonna call it and it's gonna coincide with a state election in November.
Yeah.
And it allows if when the state does wacky stuff, which I have to admit they do. You not having to go in and change the charter if they decided to do something different. I understand it's the Constitution, but if you look, they want to make lots of changes to the Constitution.
no, this absolutely works, the what you have in the agenda. I threw that out just mostly just to show that I knew what it was, so.
Yeah, I
Want something to be
thought
impressed.
the same thing too. I was
Yeah.
impressed,
Yeah.
but I had also thought through the like, well, what if the state did something
Yeah,
weird?
30 days,
I
plenty of
like that
time.
we're protected with
All
this.
Makes sense.
So when this, assuming goes to a vote, is this what, this would be, there would be no reference to what it's changing from, I assume?
So normally, and
Description.
this will take a Shelley action, words from Shelley, because she is the guru of all things election. But in the past, when Shelley and I have worked on charter change referendum, there are two things that you see on the ballot. One is the plain English without underlines or saying very clearly that by voting yes, you are saying that you want to move the annual municipal election from March to November. And something, we would say something about this will cause an 18-month delay because people need to understand that the 2024 annual election happens in March. The 2025 annual election would go through March of 2025 to November. So you just want to make sure that people understand what they're doing. And so usually there's a plain language and then there is the words with what you would see here or any other revision that you would.
Well, for the November 13th, can you show as we're looking for feedback, can you show the change, like current to what we're changing
So that's what this is in your background,
with this.
the
with
striped
striped out,
rows
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
and then the underlines. Is there a different way? you'd like to
No, I
do
guess
that?
that actually is good for what I have to show.
I am here to
Never mind.
serve.
Yep, no. Yep, no.
So this would be, we'd have the public hearing on November 13th. We encourage, people would be encouraged to come in and talk to us about it. And then the schedule would be for us to vote on it in December, at our December meeting, is whether or not to put it on the actual ballot, to call the charter amendment.
And at your December meeting, I assume sometime prior to that, you are gonna ask for the specific language of what you're sending out to referendum.
Yep.
So you would see the plain language. We would ask Shelley to do her plain language and then revisions. And we normally send that to the town attorney just to double check that we are not running afoul of anything.
And that is done here. That's not, yes,
Secretary
Yeah.
of State. right?
Yeah,
not,
no, that's us.
because they like to use those double negatives. and everything.
Yeah,
Yeah, we don't do that.
yeah, we don't do that.
So.
A yes means no.
Exactly.
This doesn't commit any counselor to a vote in December or anything like that, but are there any objections to moving forward with what we have in front of us for the November hearing?
Definitely not. I just wanted to know the plain language, which you said we would get, at some point back from Shelley. We'll see that before the November 13th public
I
hearing
thought it was December.
or before December.
So I would normally say Shelley could probably get it to you for November 13th. I just don't know with the election
Going on.
where she
Yeah,
is,
That's
but
why I was curious.
yeah. And I know for sure you'd have it for December, because if you're sending something out, you usually get the exact language of what you're sending out.
Yeah, I just thought sometimes it's good to see that earlier in case some member of the public shows up on the 13th and says, fine, but this language is confusing to me. I
Yeah,
always like a
yep.
chance for people to say that. So, thanks.
It would be good to see it sooner, right? That'll be our
Yeah.
first meeting with our
Right.
new interim manager, so it'll be.
If possible. I mean, if Shelley's got a lot going on, but
All right,
sounds good.
with that, I guess that closes out the Community Development Committee. Thank you, Sophie, the really good background for today's meeting. So thank you.
So we're going to finance and operations.
So finance and operations, this first section back, September financial reports, those were included. I had asked, and actually, Sophie just handed us this document that shows the changes, that we've made or that have been made. The budget adjustments, here's the document. I guess I would ask, Sophie, can you put this document, not link it here, I guess, but maybe put it in this folder for this meeting, just.
Sure.
I'm not
Members of the
clear.
public can find it and we can.
Oh,
link
yeah,
it in, or-
maybe, yeah, I guess where would you put it?
So
Both places.
I would also remind council that we've shared the large detailed 30, whatever it is, no, I think it's closer to 15 or 20 sheet
Yeah.
document that summarizes. So that summarizes that by your order. This summarizes it by the actual adjustment by fund, by department, by division. So I don't have any problem adding that. I'll even make a note so I don't lose it because I don't have a Nancy anymore.
Yeah, just because I knew we had this and I know it gets adjusted, so I don't know, you're probably not sharing a live document, right?
So I have shared in comment form the live document. That one I have not, simply because that one gets updated right before you ask for it, because that is not something that we normally would do. We are doing it to answer your questions.
Could you, or just because we're, every month we're doing this, could you have those links included, the live one? Probably best. Yes, if we have the live link, that will cover it.
The live link for the big one?
Yeah.
So you don't need us to do that one anymore? Or you still want us to do
Well, I
that?
would, the summary is good as
Okay,
well.
okay.
That's easy enough, but at minimum, having the live document. One of these times I'm gonna be able to find it the next meeting.
That works. You can add it to your drive.
You can star it, Leo.
Which drug? I don't like Gmail, I don't like Google.
Sorry.
I'm not, I should say, I'm not good at Google.
The answer is short.
Thank you.
Okay. And I guess I just confirm with Sophie, I mean, this percentage spend, nothing is crazy out of line, everything, is there anything of note? Based on where we are? Versus percentage spend that we should be aware of?
I don't think there's
concerned with?
anything super crazy. We are gonna talk about, we've burned through a significant amount of abatement, as we kind of were expecting. But I think you are going to want to really look at council contingency, and as you do interim planning, how you might want to book that. Because the budget that you passed, a huge percentage of that was personnel costs. And we have changed personnel significantly. And you're gonna have some other costs associated with bringing new people on. So I do think, like, we've made adjustments within the planning department to account for the fact that we went from a full-time planner to a part-time contract. Right now, that full-time planner was paid because they were doing a lot of economic development work, which is now falling on Mitch. That the planner is not picking up as much of that. But on the other hand, a part-time planner for this month, now granted it was her first month and she pretty much only did the planning board. It was like 5 or 6 hours, so it was like $1,600. So we are moving all of the personnel costs that was in the planning budget to the planning, not all of it, because some clerical comes out of that, but everything that was associated with our planner is going into planning contract. Right now, it looks like that should be fine, but if things pick up, 50% of your planner costs are in TIF. And I don't know that we can make the same argument we made before about that being a TIF eligible expense. So I think you are going to, as a group, want to make sure that you are on top of, as you move people around, you had dollars split to TIFs. And if those new people come in, for example, your new manager comes in and they're not dealing with the credit enhancement agreements and the TIF accounting, and that all falls on Mitch and Zach, you might not want to say that 25% of that person's salary is coming out of TIF. So it's not a today issue. I just want to highlight for you that as we move things around, which you should do, it might impact the budget in bigger ways. And I can help summarize that for the new person who comes in so that in one glance, you can see why we were making the decisions we were making.
Great.
Now, I did want to ask, the tax collector report.
Yep.
I'd asked you a question offline.
And I didn't get to you today. I'm sorry.
I didn't have time for you.
Hey, that makes me feel so good. I could have said I called so many times. You just didn't make it.
But the main thing I'm looking to understand, one, it says, and I don't know if I'm reading it down on the right-hand corner, fiscal year 24% collected as of period end, 50%, but I came up with like 48% because we've collected I think we've collected 6.8 and we're owed outstanding at 7.3, so that's not 50%, but maybe I'm looking at it.
So give me just a second to get to the right one.
Which column are you looking at?
I'm
on the tax collector.
I'm on the
report.
bottom two,
Okay,
just those bottom two.
So are you adding the, did I do that? I looked at the same thing, Leo, and give me just a second. Are you adding personal property and real estate together? Because that bottom one is supposed to do that.
I'm looking at that bottom one and I assume period receipts, that means what we collected?
Oh,
That's what I don't know if I'm understanding these headings correctly.
so it's not supposed to be a recapitulation. One is supposed to look at the total period receipts for what we owed at the beginning of the period on all tax years and what was collected during the period and what is now owed. But now my system has decided it doesn't like me. And as I delegate, we also have brand new people working with these reports, so.
So just in that box, the box in the middle on the bottom, total property tax outstanding, when we say beginning balance 14,141,000. What is that number?
So that is the 2004, 24 real estate
Payback machine.
plus the 2024 personal property. So those two things added together equal your total tax, which should jive with your 2024. I'm sorry. It's the 13,672,000 plus the 117 plus for liens plus the 351 should give you your total balance. And then your total receipts should
Middle.
be the middle of those three columns. And then the other one should be the end.
So I was kind of mixed up thinking that on your tax bill. For that year, it's 2 equal payments for that fiscal year. I was kind of mixed up because on what we pay is in a year is 1/2 of one and half of the other shows up on our taxes. So that threw me off. So this should be equal. We should theoretically, if things were perfect, and that's what I'm trying to
If things were
understand.
perfect, it would be equal. We have a significant number of people who pay all at once. And we have another group of people that wait and pay all at once at the end. And then a large contingent of people who pay like they're supposed to.
Yeah.
So,
Good time.
again, I guess what I'm trying to get to is, are we just thinking of the Financial Times going on here? Are we seeing anything unusual where people aren't being able to pay their taxes? More so than normal.
I'm not seeing anything more so than normal. I would have to go back, but I just got the draft financial statements that we're reviewing before we then create the management discussion and analysis, which then goes back and you get your lovely book. But if I look, we're at 98.88% collected in FY 22. And if I look at my handy dandy finance page at the audits, I want to say we vacillate between 97 to 99, which is that's a good impact, a good collection rate. Much better than many communities have, but that's where you would look, Leo, would be annual, not mid-year. So let me just look real quick and I'll tell you what it was last year.
And then just to finish my point on additional information, doesn't that mean that 50.22 is not correct? But we've collected 6.8 and we're still have a balance of 7.3.
So I need to, let me just pull up the.
Not relevant to solve it now, I guess. I just want to make sure I'm understanding what we're looking at.
I can run the numbers again just to make sure that the formulas didn't get changed.
Right.
So again, just looking for alarms if we should be concerned. We're in tough
economic times and just want to make sure that we're seeing if people can by
So-
large taxes more
So-
so than.
We went from 99.06 last year to 98.88. And so I'd say we're declining, but it's not a huge
Yeah,
decrease.
and again, for this period, we're at like 48%.
Yeah.
Which, you know, if we're only, but I guess wasn't thinking that people pay all their taxes up front. So you have that, it's hard to know
some do.
exactly where we're at.
I think the key is gonna be when you talk about people having a hard time paying their taxes. I just signed 45-day notices for foreclosures. So what you will see at that point is how many people we actually foreclose on, and if they're the ones that we usually foreclose on.
We don't foreclose until what?
So we lean 8 months to 12 months. After we commit taxes, so we lean somewhere between April and June. Or April, May and July, sorry. And then we, once they are leaned, we would, it sits there for 18 months. So it's minimum. Yeah, it's a
We're
minimum.
3 years behind as far as anything foreclosure.
You have 3 years, yep.
Money, you don't want that.
Yeah,
And so one of the things that you begin to see as interest rates rise, you don't see it as much when commercial and personal interest rates are really low. But as interest rates rise and people have a choice between accruing 8% interest or accruing higher percent of interest, they often will let their property taxes go because it is generating less of an increase than other things that they.
that's, I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts or questions about this information that was provided. Hearing none.
No, but I appreciate it, because
Yeah, no,
it makes me look at it every month and I.
Yep, it's really good.
I
have one question on the graph, Leo, but I'd rather hold it given the time and I'll
Okay.
bring it back next month if we get the same graph, so it's not urgent. It's
Okay.
just a curiosity question. So thanks.
Moving on to B, staff transition planning and organizational structure.
So I want to pare this way down and let you know that it's the beginning of a discussion that ultimately would have to go to a council meeting. And it's one that I would want a couple of other people here. Rob can't be here. He has a family commitment this week. So after the assistant manager left, I instead of simply filling that position, I went through a process of really trying to understand what the needs of the town are. I had conversations with department heads, several of them, some individual and some in groups. And I also had discussion with line staff, not every single member of line staff, but many, and union representatives. So I think this is not a full-blown organizational assessment. I did not have time to do that, but it's a pretty good indicator. And what is interesting is the feedback I got seems to be pretty universal. I think that people communicated it in different ways, but what they see in some places are people who are stretched way too far. And department heads primarily. And with that, what people are concerned about is sustainability. We at Town Hall like to make unicorns in that people who have unique talents are often we take those talents and create jobs that work on what the position needs, but also what those individuals can bring for talents in other places. which is really hard. So when we thought about replacing the assistant town manager position, that had really turned into quite a unicorn. So that's one thing that staff, especially senior staff, is really concerned about creating moving forward. The other thing is, even with that setup, we had people who had significant amount of time and knowledge about multiple municipal services. So you had a department, manager's department, that was providing various levels of support to multiple departments that you may or may not be able to replicate. And even with that, efficiencies were definitely gained with over, well, 20 years for Nancy, 11 years for Val, and 12 years for me. So I think there's a real concern about when you bring somebody new in, that level of support is not going to be there as well. So then we talk about what happens when people get stretched just on a day-to-day basis. And we can't have communication. Our communication breaks down both internally and externally, which is frustrating to line staff. We don't have appropriate time at the department head level to do good planning, which then would allow you to communicate better. It's really difficult for department heads to have the attention to detail. And what I've heard from a couple of them, one of them that we're going to talk extensively about, is it is that attention to detail which allows them to feel successful in their job, which is what gives them the satisfaction to stay. It's not necessarily the money or the perks or the whatever, it's feeling like they can do their job well. And then the thing that everybody agreed was absolutely lacking is contingency. So we have built out and flow as a team to be able to support one another. As you change out team players, that's going to become even more difficult to do. And the assistant manager is the one position that held a lot of that ability. So I truly believe that the decision to hire or not, and how to and whom to hire as an assistant manager, should be made by a manager. And I think as a manager, you would be hiring somebody who is the yin to the yang of the manager's strengths and weaknesses. With two of those positions open, I really think council needs to think about which one to hire first. I'm not even going to give you a recommendation. I have thoughts, and I have shared those thoughts with your council leadership. So when I think about moving forward, we've done a couple of things. You will see in November, I'm going to recommend that we move our finance manager to finance director a little earlier. So you will see a contract come through in November for that to happen. With the loss, our assistant manager did a lot of the benefits administration and was the backup, was the primary who trained our finance person, who then became the backup. When I look at that work, I don't know that you need to pay somebody $40+ an hour to do benefits administration and payroll. I think that it's probably one of the most important aspects of the job, because the contract with staff is you do a job and we control your behavior, and for that you get paid. We kind of have to make sure we compensate them for that. So I am recommending that that we hire and advertise for a full-time HR benefits and payroll person. I would estimate all in, that would meaning wages and benefits. That's probably gonna be a top end of about $65,000 a year of total payroll costs. The other thing that our assistant manager did that I now am spending a lot of time with is directing communication. So we have a communication specialist who does all of the website integration and all of the social media and is spending a lot of time on that, we have that person as an hourly person taking direction from the manager. I don't know that long-term in a sustainable way, that is what you want to have happen. I would recommend, and this person is beginning to function as more of a communications director, meaning identifying what needs to happen, working that through and simply coordinating that work, much like any other department head would do with the manager. But we're not paying that person for that. That's not what their job description is. And I think I would strongly advise that that move to a more higher professional job description on salary to be able to manage the 24-hour communications of the town. And I estimate that well, I'll get to the changes in a minute. So for this year, right now, we are paying 100% of that person's wages out of the TIF. As you look at that, that might need to change for next year, but for this year, I would maintain that in the TIF because I would argue they're doing marketing. So while none of the department heads kick their feet up and eat bonbons during, well, they might eat bonbons, but they do it while they're working. You have a very dedicated, very busy group of people. But there is one department head that is so overloaded that if we don't make a change, we're going to risk losing that person. And when you go to replace him, you would end up with 2 people that you would need to fill those responsibilities. So I would be shocked if people didn't realize I'm talking about Rob Yerxa and the Director of Public Works and Engineering. So I've spent a lot of time talking with Rob, and we know that the goal here is not to add positions long-term to the town. So Rob and I worked within his existing staff. And what we're suggesting is that we make 2 changes to his staff. The first is, right now he's got a foreman who directs operations, meaning Rob plans all the work and the foreman makes sure that that work gets carried out. And then because our work requires multiple crews, we have leads that are responsible for ensuring that the work is done the way the foreman wants it in the various places. He is suggesting, and I fully agree, that we look at adding a foreman or promoting one of the likely leads up into a foreman of construction and planning. So you would still have your operations foreman that manages the cemetery, that deals with brush cleanup and the services and programs that happen. Your foreman of construction and planning would be primarily responsible for planning construction, the internal construction projects, planning things that allow us to move forward with cost saving and efficiency gaining pieces, and really being kind of one step ahead. So that person would take a lot of the day-to-day planning that Rob does and allow him to move it off his plate. That would leave Rob managing all of our capital operations. So facilities, equipment, and infrastructure would all funnel through Rob. So he would do the asset management, the planning, long-term planning. He would also do the procurement process to ensure that it is all done in a uniform way. And he would be making the capital plan recommendation, one voice, making that recommendation to your manager. So it's not 5 different department heads vying for priority. Now, all of their requests will be there, so your manager's going to be able to see that, but it's all going to be fed through the very same thought of what a need is and what a want is and how those things layout. And I think you'll find with good capital planning, long-term, you'll be able to find stability in the work plan, but you'll also find that long-term, he'll be able to find you savings because it's not multiple people on different timelines doing things. The other thing that Rob would do is he would take over the town safety program at the highest level. Right now, that's handled out of your manager's office, and quite honestly, the assistant manager did a lot of that, but I don't know if you're gonna have a manager coming in who would have the direct operational experience to do that. Rob that is up his alley and he would be very good at it. And it's something that most managers would, most public works directors at that level would be able to do. Your construction and planning foreman would take care of public works specific safety in conjunction with your public works director, which would work. Your public works director would also serve as the liaison for the transportation, regional transportation group, the transit group, and the policy side of the stormwater group. Just to give you an idea, in the past, those have been staffed by the assistant town manager and the planner. And right now, the recommendation that we're working through to try to test is that we don't need a full-time on-site planner. If we don't have a full-time on-site planner, somebody else is gonna have to take on some of those regional duties. So we would move those to Rob as a legitimate person. So the other piece is, in order to make this work, he would need to get some of the operational responsibilities associated that would live in the environmental service world off his plate. So he would remain the warden, but his designee would manage all the tree board stuff. He would look for our environmental services person to take on all of the landfill compliance, all of the MS4 regulatory piece, not policy piece, but regulatory piece, which he has part of now. Our environmental services person is a coordinator, which means the tasks are laid out and they coordinate those tasks. Rob is suggesting that in order for his plate to work, he really needs to make that into a manager position. So that person would be responsible for identifying what the task should be, working through those tasks, essentially becoming a division head, which would need a whole lot less supervision and support. So the idea being all of those things that I just talked about would be held with current individuals. And when you add all of that up, the only thing that would require a new body would be that HR benefits payroll person. You're looking at an additional approximately $95,000. When you look at long-term, this is long outside of my tenure, but when our current superintendent of the wastewater retires, I would strongly encourage the council to be looking at moving the collections work under public works. And instead of hiring a superintendent, hire a chief operator, which is a lower degree of responsibility for a smaller rate, and then splitting your public works director, have everybody report up through your public works director, which then allows you to split his salary between the general fund and WPCF. So it is a way to take some of those superintendent duties. The plant operates on the chief operator, not on the superintendent license. So I would also recommend if I were sitting here, that when our public safety director is ready to move on, the whole suggestion when we started that was that he was gonna be here to mentor two young people, so I would recommend that you not fill that position, which would allow you to simply have to have the costs associated with bringing a deputy fire chief up to a fire chief. I would not recommend that you backfill that with another deputy. So that is my general initial thought. The only thing that I have moved to do here is to hire Nancy's replacement at this point, which is your administrative assistant. And we are partway through that process. The applications close on Thursday. I will say, I think we're nearing 100, if not over 100 applications for the position.
Wow.
Well, I spent a lot of time this weekend weeding out people who had no relevant experience or skills. So
I'm not getting the call.
yeah,
You're not getting a call back?
Pretty much. pretty much. So what I would like to do is to just get a sense, and the reason I brought this to you was number one, so you knew I was working on something, because there aren't a lot of things happening, because I'm the duck under the water. And wanting to see if this is the direction that you generally are supportive of, so that I can lay this out in regular, like as a proposal.
I think it's a good plan. I think it preserves the staff, the high performance staff we have now, gives them a little bit of breathing room. And who knows, 6 months down the road may prove that the position we had previously configured as assistant manager might be something else, and a new manager may choose not to hire or to hire differently for that position. So we may see some larger savings down the road by restructuring like this now. So that's my. Thanks.
Yeah, I was just kind of adding it all up, I guess 95. We're making a bunch of changes and it's gonna be an increase of 95,000. It's about where we, somewhere in that area for, and so I guess I think I was heard initially like, yeah, we definitely should hire, but I also think I heard we're not gonna do that. Not now, we need, well, whether we get a manager first or an assistant manager first. But I think we're making these changes, shifting workloads. I think a lot of it sounded like to help out with like the redundancy or contingency stuff that was kind of there. with the Assistant manager. I know a lot of this stuff is based on what Rob's doing as well, but I think we would probably be looking to figure out how we don't have a net increase of the 95,000 by bringing exact same staff back, but.
So I think my goal here was to say, you have no idea sitting here today, the skill set that you're gonna bring in, and every manager has a unique set of skills and abilities, and a unique way of looking at things. I also know, or have an inkling, that watching communities go through this process, the councils that take time to be very thoughtful and very clear about what they're looking for in a manager and include staff in that process, have a better chance of getting a manager that's going to sit and stay and be successful. And when I look at the timelines for that, that's often a 6-month process. And a manager working in another community would have to give probably anywhere from 30 to 90 days notice. So you're looking at a 6 to 9 month process at the outset. If you choose, I mean, you could choose something different, but my goal here was to try to stem the places that I already see stress so that you can maintain the department heads that remain and give them the support that they need to feel successful.
I really appreciate the, all the conversations and, thought that's gone into this to date. I think it's really, valuable, to be thinking through the details of something that's gonna support our staff people and allow them to be successful in a transition. I do, feel some hesitancy to like make all the changes all at once, before we have a new manager identified, because I think that in the long term, some amount of restructuring and working with department heads toward how they're gonna work with a new manager is what I would imagine as an ideal process. And I certainly see your point about making sure that current staff are supported through the transition and easing pinch points. And I also am a little bit curious what timeline you were imagining for this and what the role of the new manager would be in helping to refine that. Because in my view, kind of having a new manager on board and a new assistant town manager coming in is a great opportunity for them to be building relationships with department heads where they can, I think, take some of these really good ideas and also maybe be coming together with new ideas for how they all want to move forward together.
So I think the public works, I think that needs to happen immediately. I think that you have a public works director who has felt stretched and had these other people coming in and doing a lot of this helping work for him, then those people don't exist. And to keep somebody at that level of stress for 6 months, I don't think is tenable. You could do it. But this is coming from your public works director that you currently have.
Right.
And job duties can be tweaked. These are not things that haven't been considered before. When I look at what our communications person is doing, we're either gonna have to, I've noticed since Bell left, that we're either gonna have to roll back what he is currently doing and put it into a box and figure out who is gonna manage him for the time that we're not here, that you don't have a manager. And also roll back all of his identification of issues and ability to work on his own and not just have tasks assigned to him. Or you're going to, you either have to roll the job description, what he's currently doing, back to his job description and his pay rate. Or you're gonna pay him for what he's doing. And when I look around to what towns are doing right now, they are hiring high functioning communications people, not marketing people, but people who are expected to be on duty, just like other salaried people, as opposed to hourly people. So and your HR benefits person, you're going to flood. Your finance director is going to take on being the tax collector and the treasurer, which are reasonable roles for them to have. HR benefits and payroll, I think, are reasonable things to have somebody do full-time in a finance department. And what you're leaving your manager with is a decision about what to do with the manager's office in terms of an assistant and whether that assistant and what that assistant does. And assistants in every single community do things very differently. And I think that is where you kind of figure that out. But ultimately, Sonia, council can do whatever council wants.
I just really appreciate the thoroughness of this, and I know how many hours of staff conversation and time and thought has gone into this. So, and I am looking at, I think many of these things were already, the finance promotion was already in the works, and it was pretty obvious when Bell left that we were going to have an issue around HR and, finance and audio, and I'm sorry, techie things that I'm not good at, right? Audio visual things. There were certain things we knew right away. were gonna happen when Bell left. So I appreciate folks coming up with solutions for that. I think it's very important to deal with the stress on Rob Yerxa right now. That sounds extreme to me, and I'm very concerned that we deal with that right away. I know nothing about HR and benefits and how much time any of that takes, but I'm assuming that you've all looked at that and that is a full-time, not a half-time job from what you're looking at, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the thought being, there is a perennial request, and I heard it when I talked to people downstairs for halftime, at least a halftime person out front in Shelley's shop, that right now somebody calls in sick and Shelley ends up working the counter all day.
Mhm.
So what we're hoping too is this will build a little bit more of that cross-training possibility to be able to help cover Shelley a little bit better. And I will tell you that Shelley's workload, Rob Yerx's workload, Mitch's workload are
Yeah.
really high. And then you've got people like Lori, who already had a full plate, who is taking on the DEI work. She is now part of our, she is a signer on the town's cash accounts because we can't find enough bodies to be able to do a segregation of duties to pay bills the way Gatsby wants us to without having two bodies in the town manager's office. So, I mean,
And I guess I don't think that this precludes whoever's coming in from having further conversations, down the line, if there's a reorganization that happens again. I wasn't sure if you were speaking, Sonia, about the interim town manager coming or the permanent one, because we don't have a timeline yet on a permanent one. The interim, we have some information of how fast that might happen. So I do think that, I think the interim is not likely to want to be making big structural decisions. That isn't really their role.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think we need some decisions made that are going to last us until the permanent person arrives. And the last thing I guess I'll say is I'm just also wanting to ask about this plan. Is any of this relieving any stress on Mitch? Because I also heard that mentioned and Mitch is sitting here and I know when the planner left, that put some stress on Mitch. So is there some part of this that's going to ease up what's happening to Mitch at all? Or how are we doing on that, Mitch? Or Sophie, I'm looking at you both, but I mean, I just want to be sure.
Day, we show up and we do
Okay.
our work and we go to the next day and that's,
I,
right now, that's where we are.
and I think reducing expectations for planning, which is where you guys are right now. We're getting ready for the comp plan, which is a different thing. We don't have a lot of that stuff in the hopper. Mitch has got some really big economic development projects and some other things that we will talk about coming up in a few minutes, but everybody is overloaded. My point with Mitch is just that with his prior experience, a place that Mitch had, he was helping with overflow.
Okay.
Mitch is too busy right now to be able to work on overflow.
Okay.
Is that, I mean, you always help, but I'm not gonna ask him to, on a long-term basis, review the warrant. That, I mean, to do it in a short gap until we get people in, that makes sense, but long-term, he can't do that. And
So do you feel like these other things are going to help so that Mitch doesn't have so much overflow he needs to deal with, these other changes we're suggesting here?
I'm hoping.
Okay, and Mitch is nodding. I want to be sure we're checking in with every department.
guess
So,
I
yeah.
would say this from
Yeah.
my perspective.
Yeah.
Rob Yerxa needs help.
Got
As much as we all need help,
it.
Rob
He's the
Yerxa
top.
trumps us.
Yeah.
And I would say that in all honesty, there's so much going on there. We all work very much across and as a team and we pick it up wherever we can pick it up. It's just getting harder and harder. I mean, you've lost hours. Just mathematically, you've lost hours. So we're all gonna have to do more and we're trying to do that. But I certainly, without a plan, that becomes really scary to walk forward with. I think having a plan makes us all feel a little bit more comfortable as we're moving forward.
And I think as council walks through its process of identifying what it wants for a new manager, hopefully it will also identify a tighter set of goals so that your new manager is working closer to 40 or 50 hours a week as opposed to close to 70 hours a week to meet those things. And when that happens, things will start to come in line for other people. Except Rob Yerksa, because he's already.
Yeah, that needs to get dealt with clearly.
What do we,
That's great, thank you.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm just saying, like, we have no idea. I think we should. In this particular case, since we don't know who's coming in, we don't know what they want, we have no idea, we can't look into the future, that we should take the recommendations
Absolutely.
of Sophie right now moving forward, because she's the closest person to her staff. She knows what they need, she knows what they want. And so me personally, I would, and I don't know what the new what a new manager would want. I don't know what they need yet. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but I would love to see, whatever we can do to help them, and that.
And I would say a good town manager coming in is probably not gonna tell you anything major for 6 months to a year.
Yeah.
And so my personal feeling is to especially move forward with the Rob, definitely with the. Say, yes, please. That's me. Anybody else?
I just wanted to ask. I think a lot of this it sounds like it's gotta be done. I'm just thinking about timing in terms of item 7. In terms of the planning and priorities for the interim town manager. I know, Jeff, I if the sense you had news you want to share with us, I don't want to jump ahead in schedule, but I mean, how does this proposal come forward? It's the first time we're hearing it. Some of us are hearing it for the first time. So how does it come forward to us in a way that we can determine? I don't know how much of this we have to make decisions on as a council versus.
I think we just have to give Sophie the nod that we're comfortable with her moving ahead with some of these internal staff changes, and then any adjustments to the budget would come before council anyway.
Contracts would come before council.
I would like to signal to our department heads that they're gonna get the support that they need to continue. We're gonna talk about what our priorities are for search and, how we're gonna prioritize services to our community moving forward. And I think this will be the extent that this is an opportunity that has buy-in from the team. And people are asking the council to do this. I think it's an opportunity for us.
Agreed.
Nod.
I know I just got here, so I haven't heard what the plan is, but I agree with that sentiment, so I'm assuming I'm probably.
There's a lot of stuff that you do is send you up to. Class 8 drivers like. Payroll.
I'll do my best.
Yeah.
No, so could you give me just the briefest recap of what this?
Briefest recap is that I've met with senior staff and multiple times, and other members of staff, union leaders, and am recommending some changes to existing staff, and also the addition of an HR and benefits and payroll person for the finance department, moving the communications person from a specialist to the director of communications, just because he's pretty much doing that. Creating a foreman position of construction and planning that would reorganize the department, not add another body, but just a reorganization. And moving the environmental services coordinator to an environmental services manager, which all moves work off Rob's plate and allows Rob to really embrace the capital side. He would become the capital procurement person, asset management, create all of the capital plans, so they would be integrated and make sense and hopefully save money long term.
Sounds
But
great.
mostly try to take stuff off Rob's plate because he's way overloaded.
It all sounds like it makes a lot of sense. I appreciate you doing all that work.
And let me just add, since they're gone, the concerns that were raised, just so you have them in your head. Sustainability, they feel like we're really good at making unicorns to save money, and unicorns are really hard to fill. They are concerned that they are so stretched at the department head level that communication, both internal and external, is really hard. There's not enough time to plan. And that it's harder to give attention that is necessary to detail. And we're seeing where they pick up the balls, where they're dropping. And then the last one that they're really concerned about that the assistant town manager brought was contingency, that ability to have a place to pull to.
So if you have a nod,
Exactly, that's a thumbs up.
Yep.
There you go. Thank you, Sophie. Thank you to your staff.
item C, review the proposed language for town of Orono Code Ordinances, chapter 29, article 3, regarding the renewal process of marijuana establishment.
So if you recall, when we had our one business establishment that is required to be licensed to come forward and renew, there was some ambiguity as to whether or not it required a public hearing. We had a brief conversation at a committee meeting in which there seemed to be unanimous agreement that we should treat this like any other kind of license we have and require renewals to have public hearings. So I tried to make this the simplest revision to just say the initial application and all subsequent renewal applications shall be, number one, I said received and processed by the town clerk at least 14 days prior to the next scheduled public hearing. So and then marijuana establishment applications shall be advertised by public notices. So it ties the renewal in as the application that you're talking about. So it clears that up, that every renewal is an application that must have a public hearing.
Are the underlined words the text that's been added?
Yes.
Thank you. And this matches pretty much exactly our process for liquor establishments, correct? Yeah.
The only thing that I'm making very clear here and that we would want to do, likely if you went to those other places, when you get people who show up 2 days before the council meeting and expect to be able to renew a license, it's frustrating for everybody and we can't turn it around on that notice. So we're saying if we have it 14 days in advance, we'll meet publishing deadlines and be able to publish public hearing.
That's great.
Looks good.
All right, thank you, Councilor Kenny. We'll move on to Council Chair and Town Manager reports. I have no report. Do you have anything?
I have some,
Okay.
and I'm gonna try to just go fast, so if you need me to slow down, please stop me, but next Monday is Council Picture Day. At 4:30, Jess Mason is gonna be here. We know we need pictures from Matt Powers, Dan Demerit, Sarah Marks, and Jeff, we need a council chair picture from you, which is a little different. If anybody else goes on the website and looks at your picture or the annual report, look at your picture. If you want a different one, now is the time. Get it?
That's as young as I'm ever gonna be. in that
Well,
Just keep running it.
Jim.
Yeah,
We-
yeah.
we're all quite sure that Leo has set the dress code for pictures. That was probably one of the.
Biggest surprises.
So
Check this out, Leah.
today, and I will tell you, back when Nancy was here, she would send out something Thursday and then Monday reminding you. I am not gonna do that. I just don't have the bandwidth, so you are reminded. Today I sat through tax abatement mediation, so if when somebody submits an application for tax abatement, that goes to the assessor. If the assessor doesn't approve it, either in whole or part, if you're not, essentially, if they do a partial and you're not satisfied with that, you can appeal. That goes to a local board of assessment review. If your property is worth less than $1 million, your only avenue for appeal is to Superior Court. If your property is worth more than $1 million, and I think not residential, I think it has to be commercial, it goes through the State Board of Assessment review process. That state board process starts with a mandatory mediation. So we have Roger Huber represents the Board of Assessment Review. So anytime they meet, Roger is there to make sure they do it right. And then if that is appealed, he represents us through the first stage, which is that mediation stage of the state board. After that, it would have to go to Bernstein Shore. So CD Park 7, which is the Avenue, appealed. We're talking about a 2021 assessment, which is really for FY22, because we have to be complicated. They're asking for 4 million.
Well, they were saying 34. It's 40.
Okay, sorry, an $11 million reduction in value. When that went to the Board of Assessment Review, they said absolutely not, and they denied it. So we spent 2.5 hours, almost 3 hours today in mediation. We were not able to reach an agreement. Part of the reason for that is this is the assessment that was based on the revamp. So everybody in the entire town was looked at the same time. More importantly, all of our rental properties were evaluated in the same fashion at the same time. So we feel like we have good equity there. If we go through and we say just those big 3 student housing complexes on Park Street, they bring in over $100 million of value in a $600 million total value. So they're significant contributors. If we say, no, we will settle with you because we don't want to spend the money on the legal fees associated with fighting this at the board, we're essentially taking all of our effort to find equity and throwing it out. So I had a conversation later this afternoon with Bernstein Shore, who would represent us at the Board of Assessment Review hearing. And they have agreed to take us on as a client. I do think that's important for us to do. And I was a little bit shocked because during mediation, it was quoted it would be a 6-figure legal bill. And I'm like, I don't think so. So talk to Bernstein Shore. They think this will be between 20 and 60,000. So totally, when we did the overlay, we tried to include about 50,000 for defense, thinking that we likely would not have the funds available. We would not find agreement at mediation. So that was part of our abatement kind of contingency there. So I'm not sure what the process is. We also were able to not get the head of the property tax division, which means that the lawyer we're getting is good at what he does and bills much cheaper per hour than the person we were using before. I've made arrangements with Mitch to oversee that. So when I'm gone, he'll have a department head who will be overseeing it. Roger Huber will bundle up the case record and send it to Bernstein Shore. So that you have, but you'll begin to see the overlay budget eaten away at. Same vein, but different. We had 2 civil cases brought. We filed insurance claims. They were brought by the same individual. One against the animal control officer, which, while not our employee, we agreed to indemnify and hold the county harmless. So that went on our insurance. And then a previous police officer, so somebody who used to work for us, stemming from the same general issues, animal control issues for this person. Both of the cases these were funded. These were insurance claims. And the animal control was dismissed with prejudice last week, last week. Found out about it today. That means that they can't bring another claim on the same set of facts. The police officers was dismissed a little bit sooner, but that was without prejudice, and the reason it was dismissed is it was filed in the wrong court. So I don't know if if this person will try to bring it back in the right court or not. Been spending an awful lot of time, Rob Yerkes's, mine, and our communications person with the trash and recycling rollout, getting a lot of people opting for smaller bins, people with questions, that kind of stuff. So we're kind of working our way through that. Our pool project, I got to go up and enjoy the pool with no water in it. When you stand in 12 feet deep concrete pit, it looks like 12 feet, looks much deeper than when you jump in from the top. I would just really, you might want to just wander up, not necessarily go into the construction zone, but just take a look.
There's no lifeguard on duty, Mark.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Staff has just used an incredible amount of good old fashioned Yankee ingenuity, I think is
Love
what
that.
you would call it. And a ton of out of the box. They could have easily gone to Rob and said, we can't do this. And instead, you know, it was a whole team, but Scott Olet, I think, kind of led the team, and it is incredible. And it does highlight that when the liner comes to you as a capital project next year, I think you really want to say yes, because I think it's on its last legs. I would just remind folks that Lori Carpenter has been leading the town's efforts with Americans Who Tell the Truth, and Pete has really done some creative social media posts, and we're seeing a lot of activity around that. Encourage people to go November 1st at 6 o'clock to that up at the Performing Arts Center. It's a really neat partnership with the school around a space that we all said could be used by the community, and this is an example of that. Trunk or treat is happening downtown, and we've had a few people call and ask us what day Halloween is, and so it really is on Halloween, 31st of October. Route 2 corridor, Rob Fitch and I met extensively, not quite so extensively, with the consultants and MDOT around the Route 2 corridor project. There are a few places where there are multiple options that will be brought forward, but I think overall you'll be really impressed with a very thoughtful project and some out of the box thinking. I will tell you that with change comes change. And some places I can already envision politically, you are gonna have to be willing to say this is what's best for the community, even if you hear some things like tightening up access ways that have been wide open, but for safety really need to be smaller, that I think some people will be new and not as exciting as they hope.
When does that roll out?
So we gave our okay, and with some changes and some explanations wanting to come forward. Rob will work with the new town manager or interim town manager to set a date. That's gonna take significant public outreach. And so the first place we're starting are with a series of stakeholder meetings. Council being one of the first groups of stakeholders that we'll go to, but we've got Bicycle Coalition of Maine, ADA people, folks like that. There are a couple of roundabouts that are put in there as options, and that takes a lot of community planning to kind of think about before you come up with designs for it. But at this point, really excited. I already talked about the public safety building assessment is scheduled for November 27th. The team met with Owens and his team at Sebago Technics, and had a very good meeting and thinks that you're gonna be very impressed with the report that comes back. We did get the $70,000 private grant for new extrication equipment for the fire department, so we're kind of thrilled about that. You're gonna see a kind of unique set of resolutions that will come to your next council meeting. But they do their thing. I already talked about the November 27th special council meeting, so that would be my last week. And Jeff and I are working through some of the orders. They should not be major for you at all. A lot of them are just kind of perfunctory, like you're gonna need a new treasurer, you're gonna need a new tax collector, and we can't function with a gap in them. Been working with the DEP and bond council on the clean water state revolving loan fund grant, loan that we have from the Maine Municipal Bond Bank started out for the Mahaney development. We've got about $140,000 left. We're trying to get permission to use that on the Webster neighborhood. I agreed to do the launch documents, which simply mean we're not gonna have the project done before May 14th. And try to get that ready for, if not your November meeting, your December meeting. But that way I can just get it all done for you, and your interim won't have to worry about that. And the last one is kind of the when it rains, it pours. So here I am, Jeff, Leo and I created a really nice list of the tasks that we wanted to get done before I left. And I got home we met Friday evening, and I got home about 6 o'clock that night. Just to open up the fact that jury questionnaire that I thought I just didn't get picked for.
Oh, no.
So I have jury duty through
December 3rd.
6th through December 1st. So
Oh, wow.
we're gonna be working.
Wow.
We're hoping there's some.
Inspiration.
You've been
clause.
chosen.
Yeah.
In the pool, doesn't mean you have to go.
Congratulations. Have you ever done it
You in the
before? I think
pool or
it's
you
fun.
chosen?
So I have to.
You have to go and show up.
I have to show up. So I'm hoping I won't get chosen. So working with Jeff and Leo, I also created. We've been working on a list and it's in the wrong notebook, but trying to get the things that I have been intimately involved with through the process so that somebody doesn't have to pick that up partway through. So on the agenda for next week, we've got Economic Development Action Plan. This could be super complicated, or it could be really simple so that we give, this is in OEDC's bylaws that we have it. We just have to tie in workforce housing to the plan. So Mitch and I are doing something really simple. The internal controls revision, manual revision, the chapter 2 purchasing ordinance, and I'm sure there will be a couple of other small things on there.
Great.
Sophie, can I ask one question? Just connected to all the great events you said are coming up. So trunk or treats on October 31st, November 1st is the Americans Who Tell the Truth event up at the PAC.
Yep.
And then November 5th is our next community potluck at the Keith Anderson, which the Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Committee will be planning in detail tomorrow.
Yep.
Which all makes me get to my question of, is the digital sign likely to be functioning again soon? That's my question.
So Pete and I met about that today. There is a part that is broken, and so it is ordered, and much like many things in the world today, I have no idea when that's going to come up. As soon as it's functioning, we will get it out there, because we also have other things that we want to publish on there. And the other thing that we've missed and not talked about is just the reminder that window dressers is happening this week at the Keith Anderson.
Is that
Happening currently.
Currently, as we speak?
Yeah, it was all weekend and I think all week.
Okay.
And
Great.
anybody is invited to stop in and lend a hand, correct?
Absolutely. We'll show anybody how to do
And I
it.
did try it out last year. Any monkey can do it.
I hear it's really fun.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's a really cool little mini manufacturing system they set up upstairs in Keith Anderson.
And so in the meantime, while our sign is down, the way to get things like that out is by our Facebook page and by our email list, town email list. So we'll be utilizing those more, I guess, or as much as we can. Okay, got it. Thanks.
All right.
And just the other thing that's gonna be happening from a community perspective, and I don't have the dates quite yet, but or maybe it already did happen. The Union Street boat launch, maybe it already happened last weekend. We had an invasive, no, not last weekend. We had an invasive plant. Happens on the 4th, an invasive plant work session with the neighborhood. So Megan is working directly with Taylor and that group.
Perfect.
There's a lot happening in that week. That's a great.
Charge up all
Thank
my
you.
chainsaw batteries.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, thank you, Sophie.
Sorry.
We have an
Sorry.
opportunity on our agenda for public comment. Do we have anybody online?
The only people I see online are town staff.
Okay, then let's move into our workshop. And I'd like to frame this a little bit differently. When I asked Sophie to put this on the schedule, and I had originally envisioned it, I thought we would have some time. We're approaching our 3rd hour. Nothing good happens in a public meeting after the 3rd hour. So with your permission, I'm going to just outline a couple high points and then ask you to give me feedback throughout the week. And then I'll shoot back a response. We'll put something together. And the first thing is that Dan today called me up and said, I had a great idea about sort of framing a message to the public around our priorities in the search. He shared with us a document for that. I think I had no part in writing this, but I think it's near perfect. I really like it. I would like to put that on the website, maybe not on the front page. I'll leave this up to staff or maybe somebody else's suggestion, but at least in the town council portion of our website, this is very clear to the public that we have a process for public engagement. So Dan, I didn't mean to take time from you because I had asked Dan to actually talk about his
No,
statements.
it's fine with me. I
But-
made a minor change based on some feedback I got.
Okay,
I changed citizen led to citizen engaged. So
perfect.
then
I thought it looked excellent.
Yeah, so if we could do this, if you have any, today is Monday.
still.
Yes, if you could share feedback with to Dan by Wednesday. Dan, if you could by Wednesday night or Thursday morning, share that back with me and then I'll communicate with Sophie about appropriate way to.
The other thing that would be really helpful when staff I've become more versed in the website than I ever wanted to be, but when staff makes a decision about how to structure that, are you envisioning many communications with the community? Because one thing we could do is just put a button to its own.
That was my
page.
next ask for you. Okay, so this, previous to that, okay, I think we're gonna have to have a portion of our website devoted to the manager search and our process. Even before we get that started, this statement is just saying, listen, we have commitments to the community, we have commitments to the staff, we have commitments to our processes. And we want to fulfill those in a really transparent way. The language is very nice. So I think that can exist just as a statement in the council piece, but you're right. I think we will have to set up a button, right? So everybody can quickly access our process. So that was part number 1. Part number 2 is that I wanted to get a sense from the council about what we envision for an interim manager. Because the communication that I've had from, I've spoken with one person who is currently working as an interim manager. I've spoken with a couple other town managers or former town managers, is that in most cases, an interim is a part-time employee who spends a couple days in the office and can spend a couple days remotely, but really works to keep the system running and doesn't take on the responsibilities of the job that, like with strategic planning and things like that, that we would expect of a manager. If we are comfortable with an interim working in that role, I think it will be fairly easy to advertise and make connections and look for a manager. If we as a council are looking for an interim manager who does something more than that, we're going to have a more substantive conversation about what our expectations of an interim are. So that was actually going to be what I had hoped to talk about tonight. But I guess I would invite you all to share with me your thoughts on an interim, and I'll communicate that back out to everyone in as quickly in as quick a way as I can.
So what's the thinking on like, is part of this like the process too? Like, I mean, it feels like you've taken on the responsibility as a chair to start these conversations.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
oh yeah, so that's part number 3.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a statement, council wants to move forward transparently. Then we have to decide what our expectations of an interim are, because we haven't advertised it, we haven't gone out and done that. Once we do that, then searching for an interim town manager is, we can put out a call. I've put out a call to Dave Barrett at MMA. He's certainly has like this set of names that he's willing to share with us. But I don't want to do that until we're comfortable. I don't want to put out a call for an interim if the world thinks an interim is a 35-hour-a-week job and we think an interim is a 45-hour-a-week job, because we want more responsibilities. So we need to have that piece done first. And then we can talk about our process for selecting an interim. My feeling is we have to do this and this is just my feeling, we can differ. I think we have to do it expeditiously. And I think since an interim is inherently a short-term position, if we decide among ourselves that the interim is going to keep the lights on, the payroll flowing, the management going, but it's not going to take substantive steps to restructuring the organization of the town, we'll get a handful of applications. We can sit with those applications in an executive session, vet them, and relatively quickly make an offer. This would be different.
Or interview.
Or interview, yeah. Go through the process. I think this would be different if it were, and I think it will be different when it's for the full-time manager, where we have to have employee sessions, and we want to have many community sessions and stuff like that. That is really, it's really up to us. It's really up to you how we see this process. I'm afraid that the clock is ticking. We've got essentially 4 weeks, if we take out the holiday weeks and stuff like that, 4 weeks.
Counting jury duty, we got 2 weeks.
4 weeks to get this done. And I don't want to limit our input. I don't want to limit public input. But I look at this hire as more of an operational hire. And I look at the full-time town manager hire as really more of an aspirational hire. So that's how I envision it. I don't know. I guess we.
Yeah, it has to be that.
That makes
Like, how
sense
can
to
it not
me,
be
Jeff.
that way?
I think there are times towns don't even advertise and interview. I think that's a choice and not bad or good. The only thing I would, from a process standpoint, suggest is we're gonna meet next Monday. It's I purposefully am trying to not make it a huge lift for Monday. That would allow you to do your prioritizing.
That would be wonderful.
At that point, I'm just a little nervous about you writing things and sending them and then getting things back,
Right.
and then that doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous about.
Yeah, I want to be completely transparent, and I certainly don't want to violate any of our communications protocols. So
Could we just make a suggestion that maybe we put this as the first item of our agenda on Monday, though? Because really right now, this is the most important thing that we're engaged in as a council, I
Yeah.
think. And I know it's not our typical process that we do a lot of other things and get to the big workshop things later, but I would just like to offer, could we do it first? Is that possible?
I mean, it sounds like we all agree that that we're gonna be looking at, keep the system running, right? So that's not, we don't have to have that discussion.
Right.
We're having a discussion to look at
Well,
resumes or talk.
I'll tell you right now,
What do
we
you-
just talking to the few people I've spoken to. I have one person who's already said he would be interested in applying when we decide what we're looking for, and I'm sure the minute that we decide, and we can pick up the phone and we can call our contact at MMA, we'll get a couple more interested people. I think it will be a fairly quick process.
procedural wise, is there anything, I mean, we agree this is what we're doing. Put the call in and see what we get already, or what are we talking about? Just so I'm
I
not.
think my only question really is, I'm not clear yet on what timeline we're asking this interim to be here for. So that is really my question, and that partly depends on how much we need them to do. Like, do we feel hopeful that it's possible to hire a permanent town manager within 3 months? Or do we believe that is definitely going to take 6 to 9? Because that changes a bit about what we're going to need someone to do. So do we have that information yet?
We don't, and really that's gonna come out of our search, our long-term search process. I think it's a minimum of 6 months. So I think whoever we approach, we have to say, it's a 6-month job.
My personal feeling is if someone's willing to do the full-time 40 hours a week, that's probably better for us. We get more service during those 6 months. So I wonder, can we write a job description that says, if you're able to do this, that's great. And if you're not, we will consider folks who can do whatever that is.
I think it will
But-
limit the number of applicants we get because many of the interim folks are retirees or people who are doing,
So they want 30 and less.
yes,
Got it. So we write it for 30 maybe?
yeah, I think we can do that.
I don't know. I'm just asking. That's a
As
question.
far as next month, sorry, as far as next Monday, I'm also gonna be late again. So if there is a workshop to talk substantively about our sort of longer term planning for the, not the interim manager, but the permanent position, I would prefer if it was later.
Okay, so I think these can be 2 separate conversations.
Great. I wasn't sure exactly what we were planning.
So I would offer for your consideration that an interim might rather see the scope of work that you're looking for. I think you might want to treat this more like a consultant than an employee. And I think it might be worth Jeff and Leo's time to maybe sit with the senior team and think about what they think they need for support. And part of what we're doing is shedding a lot of the statutory things that other things I do to allow perhaps you to kind of focus.
Maybe Leo and I can have that conversation tonight. We can report, that can be the start of our conversation on Monday.
Yeah, so I'm just, think about that.
That makes great sense.
Sounds like great feedback from staff to get.
Yeah, I love the idea of being able to include department heads and other folks who are gonna work with this person in the conversation about how best to do it.
But I think it also, I agree, it also makes sense to make it more content based and less just like, here's the hour framework. Like, what do we actually want done? So we have a clear understanding of what our expectations are gonna be. So
Yeah, I think that would be good. Okay, so that was my 45-minute plan, squished down into 15 minutes.
And we
And
will
I-
start with this next week.
And we'll
We don't-
start with this next week.
Right.
With the interim conversation next week, because I know that the permanent conversation is a longer discussion. And and if I get contacted back by MMA, I'll sort of explain to them what we're thinking about our process, and if he wants to share names or contacts, he's welcome to, but if he wants to hold that until he sees what our expectations are, I'll just tell him I'll call him. Good. Is there, yes,
No, I just. The expeditiously part, I think, is important. Say this is gonna be run-of-the-mill interim. But I do assume that most of them have a sense for what the job is, and I agree, I mean, I appreciate the suggestion that we hear kind of figuring out what our scope is, but it's probably not that different. I would love to make sure, I guess they already know we're fucking right, so. Let's find out who's out there, I feel like.
yeah, so I'll get, if MMA has names, I'll get.
I actually could,
Know that.
do you have access to the MMA website?
I have access to the public version of the website. I don't have access to,
Log in.
no, I do not have a login. I mean,
So, tomorrow, I will get somebody to, print out, I got 9 names.
Yeah.
And then there are a couple that already reported to you. So I'm happy to share that with you.
People that have publicly put their name out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, so MMA for members has an interim manager resume. And so I'm not sure, and I want you to talk to Dave Barrett if you want.
Yeah, I put in a call to him. I haven't received a call back yet.
I think he might be in Egypt, I'm not sure.
Okay.
But I think that just like you rely on me for day-to-day operational things, there are some of these managers who have interim as a lifestyle and probably could tell you exactly what an interim does, as opposed to you creating a wheel, which is kind of what, and I think the other thing that would drive some of your decision-making would also be a discussion about the process that you wish to use in terms of search, meaning, are you engaging a firm to do your search? Or is that something that you want an interim to assist with? Because those are two areas.
Yeah. And I think that's gonna be part of our discussion of how we envision the search for the long-term person. Okay.
Perfect.
All right. Well, is there anything else this evening? Nothing. Awesome. Let's adjourn. Thank you very much.
Oh, watch that library discussion.
Yeah.
It's really.
Very